My dog. Peace. What it do? All right. So last video we left off. The main aspect that you need to focus on for you to understand as we keep going, because I'm not explaining everything in past videos. That's why I did this one through wherever I finish, because it's so much for you to understand. I ain't got time to explain every little goddamn thing every video. So if you ain't watched the old ones, don't watch this one, because you ain't gonna get it. So anyway, back in 1960, as I read last video, they smashed two neutrons together and they came up with three particles. So that's why we got the model today of the three particles, the negative, the positive, and the neutral particle within the neutron. All right, here. All right, so what he's about to do as we read on is put forth a different model for the atom that's more plausible, that makes more sense. Change the weather. Okay, so I got my music in the background. I'm rocking. You can't even tell, but I'm rocking. Let me start the reading, and then I'm gonna stop and do a shot. We're gonna go through the thing and yada yada yada. Let's get it. Continuing with our example of the calcium atom, figure 7F. Clearly, at least one of the problems lies with the conventional misunderstanding of the neutron, contemporaneously illustrated as three spheres inside a sphere, figure 7A, because as just mentioned, a positive particle could never sit adjacent to a negative particle without the two short-circuiting and annihilating each other. So this glaring anachronism needs to be addressed first. The charge of the neutral positive particle is half of the charge of the full-blown proton. So to keep things simple, we can assume that the neutron positive particle is actually one half of a proton. In the same way, it is known that the neutron negative charge is half the charge of a full-blown negative electron. So we can assume that the neutron negative is half of the electron. Clearly, the neutron positive particle and the neutron negative particle must be separated by something, and the only thing left inside the neutron is the neutron neutral particle, the antineutrino. All right, so you see, he said figure AB rearranges the three mini particles so that the antineutrino separates the two charged particles, preventing them from short circuiting. Right? So let's go to AB. Let's see. What we time? Hey, like I won't do no hey. Yeah. Two with me, Lil Will. Big bankroll. All right. So figure 8 here. Here, the negative neutron particle is shown separated from the neutron positive particle by the neutron neutral particle, the antineutrino, using Rutherford's bullet ball style convention. Here, the three billard ball style particles have been replaced with a tiny positive battery-like symbol and a tiny negative battery-like symbol that are kept apart by the neutral antineutrino. This new representation will be from now on herein be referred to as spiked neutron. Brand new ARs on them. The cars on them. All right, so just with that one change of the neutron, he now solves two of the major problems within modern physics, right? By changing the neutron from this made-up construction, right, to this made-up construction, because they both made-up constructions. We talking about theoretical. We have no idea what this looks like. We can't look at an atom. All right, but this is the construction that they give us, and it makes no sense because this positive and this negative would attract to each other and annihilate each other. You see, so it makes no sense. But what can keep them apart? The antineutrino, and we know that the antineutrino exists because of the hadron collider, or they smash the shit together to find it. Okay, so in this theoretical scheme, the electrons and protons are kept apart by the spiked neutron. Like I won't do no hate. Yeah, okay. The positive pole of each spiked neutron is embedded in the mass of the proton contained in the nucleus. Huh? About to get you dropped. The neutron positive poles push against the positive protons, preventing them from springing apart. Here. Huh? I don't do no way, miss. I'm bounce bumming. So this is why the protons don't spring out. Because this positive charge here is keeping them in. Right? The neutron negative pole, which would be this side, right? This side, repels the electron, preventing them from getting too close to the nucleus, right? because the positive and positives. Hey, Mister, I still birth effect. Okay, the negative keep the negative away. The positive keeps the positive away. But this is only half the charge of this, and this is only half the charge of this. So the power of this is still attracted to the power of this, right? The electron is still attracted to the proton, but the neutron acts as a spring and keeps it apart. Okay, and it keeps pushing and it keeps sucking in and going back out. And this will become apparent and important later as we keep reading. But I'm just putting it in your mind right now so you can understand, because this, my friends, is astrology. He ain't. So I'm gonna get back to reading, and you'll see what we talking about. Let's get it. There is also no logical reason why the three neutron particles should ever have been shown as billiard ball style particles. In fact, it makes the sketching more difficult. So the neutron has been reassembled as shown in figure AC. This solves the problem inside the neutron, leaving two remaining problems with the atom. What stops the protons from springing apart, and what stops the electrons from crashing into the center of the atom? To answer these questions, we have to revisit the 1960s atom, figure 7F, and reinstall our spiked neutrons into our example, calcium atom, mindful that the current model purpose that all of the positive charges, protons, sit adjacent to each other in the center of the atom, the nucleus, and mindful that any new model should contain as few changes from the old model as possible, if only to minimize objections from orthodox scientists. Figure 8D shows the spiked neutrons reinstalled into the nucleus with the neutron positive to the center. This three-dimensional version of this new atom would resemble a chestnut shell with spikes, would resemble a chestnut shell with spikes. The schematic figure 8D now reveals how the spiked neutron makes the atom stable. The electron and protons are kept apart by the spiked neutron. The positive pole of each spiked neutron is embedded in the mass of the protons contained in the nucleus. This causes the neutron positive pole to push against the positive protons in the nucleus, preventing them from springing apart. At the same time, the neutron negative pole repel the electrons, preventing them from getting closer to the nucleus. The spiked neutron act like springs, forcing out the electrons and forcing in the protons, thus explaining away the two great mysteries of the atom. This purely mechanical model is not meant to imply the actual state of things. The de facto mechanism will be revealed later. This new stable atom, empowered by the spiked neutron, is not fanciful thinking. Science Daily, a web-based science magazine, recently reported that researchers at the Ham-Mitter Institute in Berlin have discovered that neutrons behave like compass needles. Science Daily, March 31st, 2008, 3D imaging, first insights into magnetic fields. Experimenters shown how neutrons align themselves with the direction of an extremely applied magnetic field, meaning that the neutrons must be long and thin with its charges aligned sequentially like our schematic of the spiked neutron. All right, so you see why the neutron can be looked at as more of a compass needle based on this study here. So you can understand why he would come up with the structured atom the way he has. Otherwise, get that back, which is a spiked neutron, like this. So we're gonna go forward with the rest of the story. Let's go. Three types of atoms. Rutherford soon realized that every fundamental base material apart from hydrogen is made up of the same three type of fundamental particles: the positive proton, the negative electron, and the neutron. The differences between them lying only in the number of protons, electrons, and neutrons they contain. These fundamental materials were named elements because they were the most elementary of substances, pure and basic, existing unmixed in their natural state. Later discoveries revealed that electrons orbit the nucleus in a very specific and orderly way. For example, figure 9, where the atom contains two or more electrons, then two electrons can always be found sharing the orbital shell closest to the nucleus. The next 8 electrons, let's call them numbers 3 through 10, orbit the nucleus from further away, the second closest shell to the center. 20th century discoveries then confirmed that a maximum number of electrons could occupy a maximum of 8 shells that fill up with electrons, starting with the closest shell first, followed by the filling of an adjacent shell further from the nucleus. A maximum of up to 8 electrons in the first shell, up to 8 electrons in the second, up to 18 in the third, up to 32 in the fourth, up to 32 in the fifth, 18 in the sixth, 8 in the seventh, and 2 in the eighth shell. Scientists do not understand why the shells feel as they do, or why they contain a maximum number of electrons they do, but the reason will be explained shortly. All right, so that schematic that he just explained is important because this is reality. So look, it's a schematic showing the theoretical maximum of electrons filling the maximum number of available shells in an atom. The maximum number of electrons in the shell closest to the nucleus is 2. The maximum of the electrons in the next outermost shell is 8, followed by shell subshells containing 8, 32, 32, 18. Okay, so you see the first shell got 2 electrons, the second has 8. Now, for those of us who study numerology, some of this stuff should jump out to you. Okay, like the 8, right? And if you know God in numerology is 8, so it's 26, 2 plus 6, 8, right? And then you go to 18, but you know that's 8 plus 1 is 9, perfection. And then you got 32. Now, what we know about Freemasonry, and they got 33 degrees, right? 32 is the most electrons that can orbit the mid 2 shells. Then it goes back to 18, then it goes back to 8, and it goes, the last shell can only hold 2. Now, this is important when you look at the carbon atom, because we know the carbon atom is 666, right? So it has 6 electrons, protons, and neutrons. So that means it has 2 electrons in the first shell, and then it has 4 electrons in the outer shell. Now, those 4 electrons in the outer shell, because carbon we know is the life-giving element. Called okay, carbon is a life-giving element. So this is essentially this is why esoterically or metaphysically it is referred to as Satan. Because if you're a spiritual being, the physical life is death for you. Okay, so when you are born into physical human being, etc., you die as a spirit. Okay, this is how it is looked at metaphysically. All right, hence the physical world in the Bible is Satan's world. Ain't shit free, look, come pay me. So, okay, right? So this is why if you look into like the word mortuary, right? Mortuary means place where the dead are left or are kept, right? Because the word mort means death. And if you look into it, you'll find more can refer to death. And this is because as the divine spark fell into physical existence, it was death to it. Fire with the backwood. Hey, this ain't that good. That's my favorite part. Anyway, so the death of the divine spark was called more. All right, because he fell from darkness to light. Okay, hence Lucifer, the light bearer. But I'm going to show you what Lucifer really is here in a second. But you understand what I'm saying? This is why more is death, because death is life to the spirit, because you go back to the Father, to the source, if you will. Father just means creator. Don't get into your sexisms. No, I thought blood. What they get in water is? All right. So understand the 4 elements. The four electrons in the second shell is what we call earth, fire, water, air. You see what I'm saying? The 4 major elements. Okay, in astrology or metaphysics in general. And then the 2 is what we would consider the mother and father principle. I got a 100-round drum, consider me a threat. And then the protons in the middle collectively will be considered Saturn. Oh, did I jump ahead? My bad. Let me back up. I went too far, but let me try. I'm gonna put this here in the middle for those who really want to know what's up. Okay, this carbon, if you can imagine, the rest of these not here. It's just Look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? You had a 4 in this ring, 2 in this ring. That'll be Saturn, right? The Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Mars. Choke up, man. That little nigga no cut. It's your slow way, huh? Okay, I just told you. I just told you. Well, I'm gonna keep going in this video, but I just gave you the ultimate key to astrology. I hope you caught it. So we're gonna keep going so you understand these shells, and I'll get back to this because essentially what I'm giving to you here is that what we call mythologies of these ancient gods and etc. and these reoccurring themes, a lot of that is played out in what today we call quantum physics. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna keep going, and you understand the three atoms, and then we're gonna continue. The first type of atom, the simplest atom, is the hydrogen atom, made up of a single proton that is orbited by a single electron. The second type of atom, helium, is the next most complex atom. It has two protons in the center together with two spiked neutrons and is orbited by two electrons in the first and only shell. Figure 10b_II. The third type of atom. The third, more complex type of atom contains more than two of each of the subparticles in two shells or more. For example, calcium, as illustrated earlier. When we analyze our new atom with its spiked neutrons and consider ways of how it might be drawn towards the corkscrew style electromagnetic energy conjectured earlier, no obvious interactive mechanism becomes immediately apparent, suggesting that at least one further problem remains with our understanding of the atom, and we still do not have a mechanism that would explain how an atom could generate the corkscrew radiation or indeed any kind of electromagnetic energy. Despite this, in an article in the UK Sunday Times, March 9, 2008, strip search camera sees through clothes from 80 feet by Jonathan Leake, the UK government's Rutherford Appleton Research Laboratory announced that all atoms radiate electromagnetic energy. Although they did not claim to know how, they had to admit to it because the article featured the latest technological discoveries, the all-over body scanner destined for use in airport security that detects radiation emitted by all atoms. It goes on to say that all atoms radiate electromagnetic energy at a frequency unique to each atom, although again they do not claim to understand how or why. The accidental discovery that all atoms radiate electromagnetic energy was made while investigating clouds of space dust that routinely obscure background targets. Filtering out the foreground dust wavelengths enable radiation from particles beyond the dust cloud to be seen. The article goes on to say the technology works by measuring terahertz waves, or T waves, a form of electromagnetic radiation emitted by all people and objects, atoms, that lie between the infrared and microwave parts of the radio wave spectrum. Note the choice of words, a form of, distinguishing from normal right-angled radio waves, figure 3. This obfuscation may be a deliberate attempt by the authorities to conceal the fact that although the waves can be detected and measured, the nature, the corkscrew shape of the waves to them remains unclear. The announcement from the Rutherford Appleton Research Laboratory assures us that the hydrogen atom, being one of all atoms, must radiate electromagnetic radiation, and yet how this happens or where the energy comes from inside the atom remains a mystery to orthodox scientists. All right, so you understand that even the hydrogen atom, the fundamental elements of reality, emits electromagnetic energy. Okay, that's very important. I want you to understand how they did this, and he pointed this out. That they call this in this study a form of right-angled radio waves. You see, they call them terahertz waves or T waves, right? And when you hear that as a person, the average person reading that, you don't associate that with the same thing that allows you to listen to, the radio in your car. Do you understand what I mean? You don't correlate um, radiation, nuclear radiation. You think that's different from the sound your voice makes, and it's actually the same thing, just different frequencies. Because literally, everything in reality is one thing in various forms. That thing we know is the atom, the elements, the electromagnetic energy. Okay, now they have separated us from that understanding by naming it all these pretty little names: radiation, tetrahertz, and etc. You name it. Anything in reference to energy in general is reference to electromagnetic energy, and this is showing you. All right. So lastly, he gonna point to one more thing before we end this video and go to the next, and then we're gonna go on to how this actually could work. Cause of course, all this is theory, but you got this versus the cat in the box. Yes, when it goes so. Like I said, man, when you see the dirty glass of water, you can condemn it or you can present a clean one. Instead of me just telling you that a cat in a fucking box makes absolutely no sense and ain't got shit to do with your understanding of reality, I'm presenting you with a better or different understanding, one that I believe makes more sense. So he gonna finish. He gonna finish up that last little bit. I'm gonna finish this video. We're gonna go on to the next one. We're gonna get into the electron, and this is what's gonna be the most important thing that you need to understand. The fundamental understanding of the electron. Once again, we go back to the fundamentals of the thing, of whatever it is, and we just happen to be talking about the atom. These people don't understand how this stuff works, so we will by the end of this series, or you will if you follow along. Peace and love to the next time. Another mystery worth noting is that electrons are known to spin as they orbit the atom, but again, scientists do not know why. So how could an atom radiate corkscrew style electromagnetic energy, and why do electrons spin? These issues will be addressed shortly using the simplest of atom, the hydrogen, for analysis. But before we do, we need to look at one or two of the basic features of electricity.